Hello again, everyone, and thanks so much for tuning in to this Tuesday's edition of Alaska Weather on the 16th day of August. I'm David Percy. Up first, we've got, minor to strong geomagnetic storm. Sun's very active lately, and geomagnetic storm watches are in effect for August 17th through 19th due to corona high-speed streams and coronal mass ejections, and it's the lengthy CH is anticipated to affect the Earth first on August 17th with a likely G1 condition, which is minor. An escalation to G3 storm levels, which is strong, as you can see on the chart up at the upper left, is now probable on the 18th due to several CMEs combining and beginning to arrive. Conditions are anticipated to remain favorable for G2 moderate conditions on August 19th. That's all good for aurora displays, but with the weather pattern, seeing any would be the exception with all the cloud cover around the state. So moving on to the hazardous weather graphic, there's a wind advisory out for the eastern Alaska range that kicks into effect Wednesday, tomorrow, and continues through Wednesday night and until 10 a.m. Thursday morning. Look for winds that become quite brisk through the passes of the eastern Alaska range. South 35, gusting 45 miles an hour with gusts to 60 miles an hour. That includes areas like Black Rapids, Trim S DOT Camp, Eagle Track, and Salsha, as well as Delta Junction, one of the windier spots there. And then you can see the area there, the flood watch for the Taya River. Go to the graphic here, and looks like flooding caused by excessive rainfall is possible there along the river near Daya, and that starts Tuesday evening, this evening, and continues through tomorrow evening, and expect possibly lower portions of the Chilkoot Trail along the river near Daya may become inundated. Hopefully it doesn't get as bad as what this picture shows, but I guess it's possible. Just a chance as opposed to a warning where it's imminent. And from there, still on track, south central Alaska and the North Gulf Coast, already starting to see the heavier rains move in. Got still in the forecast for Tuesday morning through Wednesday, 3 to 4 inches there around Cordova, possibly as much as 2 inches for Valdez. Whittier could see 4 to 6 inches of rain. Some of the lot that spills into Portage as well, and 2 to 3 inches possible for Seward. And then for the Kenai Peninsula, anywhere from a quarter inch to an inch. Could fall again. Already, for example, Kenai's picked up a third of an inch already, with north winds there gusting to 30 miles an hour. And that same precipitation amounts, a quarter to half an inch, covers the Mananuska-Susitna Valley and into the Copper River Basin area, all the way up to Paxson, up to a half inch possible there, and then heavier amounts in the upslope areas of the western Alaska range. And for satellite imagery, you can see the system spreading some clouds up into the Panhandle today, and then the next batch of rain into the North Gulf Coast. Got gale force winds today along the North Gulf Coast ahead of that front advancing up, and as high as 45 miles an hour at Middleton Island. And rainfall amounts, Montague Island's picked up 2 inches so far, and Kodiak Island about 0.8 of an inch by mid-afternoon. Portage, about a half an inch, and Kenai, as I mentioned, a third of an inch. And then back with that 9098 millibar low over the southwest interior, up to half an inch of rain's fallen in some areas there, and then lighter amounts up to the north. Becomes pretty scattered over the upper Tanana Valley and the Yukon Flats. Basically dry for the north slope. A little bit of moisture along the western Arctic coast. Then the next frontal system spreading some rain into the eastern Aleutians and central and eastern Aleutians, and to a lesser extent over the Alaska Peninsula. And the heavier producing rain still has yet to arrive. Starting to pick the rain up this afternoon over the Panhandle. Definitely will tonight. That system that's into the Aleutians you can see there that triple point front actually develops a low and slides off to the southeast. So periods of rain tonight diminish for the eastern Aleutians, break there for Adak and Atka. Next warm front spreading rain into the western Aleutians with a low center just barely getting on the edge of the chart there. Look for a widespread area of rain, moderate to possibly briefly heavy at times for the North Gulf Coast, or maybe heavy at times, not briefly. It might be a little more than brief. Areas from Cordova over toward Yakutat and again up into western Prince William Sound, and rain overspreading the Panhandle. Winds on the increase, especially on the north coast of the Panhandle, but Kodiak Island, periods of rain diminishing with not too bad wind-wise there. Rain for south central Alaska, rain over the western interior all the way up to the western Brooks Range, or some of that could fall in the form of snow in the higher elevations up there, along with some gusty pass winds through the Brooks Range out of the northeast, and that north to northeast wind of maybe 25, 35 miles an hour will extend from the Cape Lisburne Point Hope area down through the Bering Strait to St. Lawrence Island, and still looking at pretty gusty winds will start to diminish on the North Gulf Coast as a front shifts eastward. And then for Wednesday, periods of rain and still a little breezy. South central Alaska turning an arm, looks a little brisk out of the east and southeast, but not too strong, less than today. Definitely you'll lose the gales for the North Gulf Coast. And then rain mainly over the central and northern Panhandle. Might stay dry down to the south, just a risk of a shower, but variable clouds. And then look for scattered thunderstorm activity up in the interior with 995 millibar low just south of the lower or mid-Yukon River. And again, scattered thunderstorms possible, especially over the upper Tanana, mid to upper Tanana Valley, 40-mile country. And then a band of rain along the south slopes of the Brooks Range, but in the mountains up there to the north slope, to the Arctic coast, mostly dry, maybe some lingering showers on the eastern Arctic coast. High pressure in advance of the Bering Sea system there, moving the front across the Aleutians will make for light winds and dry conditions for the Pribilof. St. Lawrence Island will be a little breezy tomorrow, but dry. Alaska Peninsula dry as well. And we'll see on Wednesday that system deepens with 978 millibar low. That's good enough for 40-knot winds to come into the western Aleutian areas with gale force winds even into Adak and Atka, looking about 35 knots for Adak, 30 knots for Atka. Rain widespread around that low center, moderate rains, Pribilof Islands, gusty winds down to the eastern Aleutians, especially in advance of the front, dropping off the winds for the Fox Islands as the front pushes in toward Falls Pass, but rain and wind on the increase for the western Alaska Peninsula. Kind of a break there for Bristol Bay. Could see some sun breaks into the Kuskokwim Delta. Otherwise, a weak trough keeps areas of rain and showers, cool temperatures, southern Alaska. A little drier over the Panhandle, especially in the south. Could see some sunshine, but showers holding on in the north. And areas of rain and showers cover much of interior Alaska all the way to the Arctic coast. Lows tonight, 30s, Arctic coast, north slope, and in the 40s to lower 50s over central Alaska, especially with the lower 50s over the east side and mid 40s to the west, upper 30s down to St. Lawrence Island, mid 40s for the Pribilofs, 45 to 50 for the Aleutians, lower 50s Kodiak Island, 50 to 55 for south central Alaska, and lows pretty mild, especially over the southern Panhandle, 55 to 60, mid 50s to the north. Highs tomorrow, not much warmer than the overnight lows. Lows around 60. Some areas could try to push 70 degrees down there, but mostly in the mid to upper 60s. Lower 60s to Juneau to Skagway. Upper 50s for the North Gulf Coast. 55 to 60, Copper River Basin, South Central Alaska, Kenai Peninsula, and Kodiak Island. Mid 50s, Bristol Bay. 70s, lower 70s around the Fairbanks area on up to the Yukon Flats, near 70, Northway Tok up to Eagle, mid 60s in the central interior, and 40s for the North Slope and Arctic coast, and cooler 40s, lower 40s for St. Lawrence Island, and in the 50s for the Pribilofs and the Aleutians and Alaska Peninsula. Lows the following morning about the same as what we'll see tomorrow morning, 30s for the North Slope and Arctic coast, in the 40s over the interior, and 50s for the Panhandle. And highs, 65 to 70, southern southeast coast, maybe a little bit more sun there, lower 60s to the north with more clouds and showers, upper 50s to lower 60s, south central Alaska Copper River Basin, and the eastern interior, cooler to the west.
And now, aviation weather around Alaska.
The flying weather graphics, a lot of IFR over the western interior there from the Selawik-Kobuk Valley southward across the Kuskokwim Valley mountain areas and the eastern Yukon Delta, Kuskokwim Delta, down into Bristol Bay, and through Kamishak Bay and across the Barren Islands, another branch up along the eastern slopes of the western Alaska Range, IFR for the North Slope and Arctic coast, IFR, widespread IFR from the Pribilofs down to the Alaska Peninsula, westward across the southern Bering Sea and all of the Aleutians. Also widespread IFR, Gulf of Alaska up across Prince William Sound, into the western Copper River Basin, right up northward across the Talkeetnas into the Alaska Range, and mostly along the central and north coast of the Panhandle, inland areas, marginal VFR, and from there going to the afternoon, we'll see IFR spreads in over all of the Panhandle and improves, but lingers along the North Gulf Coast. Marginal VFR, or IFR to VFR, IFR to marginal VFR, southern Kenai Peninsula, western Prince William Sound. Some VFR showing up now, northern Cook Inlet, Madanuska, Sitna Valley, but IFR over toward the Alaska Range. And VFR there for the eastern interior, north of the Alaska Range there, Tanana Valley to the Yukon Flats, and some scattered thunderstorms could develop in the afternoon in that area. IFR for the North Slope, Brooks Range, Arctic coast, and a band southward there through the Bering Strait coast to the Yukon Delta coast and the north shore of Nunivak Island. VFR, St. Matthew Island, the Pribilofs to the Alaska Peninsula, that's sweeping into Kodiak Island, stays marginal though on the east side. And IFR from Atka westward to Shimianatu. And for the Thursday morning time frame, IFR for the Brooks Range, North Slope and Arctic coast. More IFR for the Seward Peninsula, western Norton Sound, down into the Yukon Delta. IFR also over the western Alaska Range. Marginal VFR with some VFR over Cook Inlet in south central Alaska. Same thing for the Copper River Basin with some IFR hung up in the Coast Range. And from Yakutat down to possibly Sitka, otherwise marginal VFR for the Panhandle. VFR, eastern interior, north of the Alaska Range and south of the Brooks Range. And then a huge area of IFR spreading into the Bering Sea there and across the Aleutians with the next system. And for the Thursday afternoon period, you can see lots of IFR now pushing northward to St. Matthew Island across the Pribilofs to the eastern Aleutians, and more IFR for the Alaska Peninsula. And along the east side of Kodiak Island, then it goes VFR for Fognak Island, Shelikof Strait, Bristol Bay VFR, some marginal VFR in Cook Inlet, and much of the western interior. IFR there for Kotzebue into Kobuk, and then into the Brooks Range, North Slope, Arctic Coast IFR. VFR for the Panhandle with IFR right along the coastline there, and Yakutat right in the IFR zone. Passes Anatuvik IFR, Adigan IFR for Wednesday as well. Lake Clark and Merrill IFR. Rainy, go marginal VFR on that pass. Windy, same thing, marginal VFR, especially on the southern entrance. And for Isabel, marginal VFR. Mentasta, south entrance, marginal VFR, better conditions though through the pass into the north. For Tanita, marginal VFR turning toward VFR throughout the afternoon. And Portage, IFR, becoming marginal during the morning hours or toward midday. Chilkoot and White, IFR. Freezing levels, cold upper low dropping down out of the Arctic into the southwest interior, and that pulling 2,000 foot freezing levels down to St. Lawrence Island, 4,000 to Nunivak Island. Staying quite warm out over the Aleutians, anywhere from 10 to 14,000 feet and 8 to 10,000 feet over the eastern interior and 10 to 12,000 feet over the Panhandle. Icing, areas of isolated moderate rime icing, Bristol Bay northward across the western part of the state, all the way to the Arctic coast and North Slope into Cook Inlet, and some of that into Prince William Sound and the Copper River Basin. Jet stream, upper level low over the southern interior there, 120 knots southwest winds into the northern Panhandle, and 55 knots in the Copper River Basin at 9,000 feet. Westerlies 45 knots over the Aleutians, 55 knots into the Panhandle, 3,000 foot winds, 45 knots into the southeast coast, 40 knots right out over Cook Inlet, and 50 knots out of the east on the western Arctic coast there. Turbulence, moderate chop, Panhandle, North Gulf Coast, and the southeast interior.
Hello. I'm a GOES-R series weather satellite orbiting 22,000 miles above Earth. I can see a lot of cool stuff from up here, and I take pictures of it with my spiffy camera that has 16 different settings. I have such good eyesight, I can see clouds, snow, smoke, smog, and ash, so I can warn you about dangerous conditions and help you avoid them. When storms are brewing, I watch them closely and help with hurricane, tornado, and flood warnings to help keep you safe. And my lightning mapper tracks lightning strikes way up in the sky, even through dark, dense clouds. I also help with search and rescue missions. I listen for distress signals from emergency beacons and tell search and rescue teams just where to find people who need help. But even when I'm keeping a close eye on Earth, I'm monitoring weather out here in space, too. I watch the sun for big bursts of energy, which send waves of radiation toward Earth that can affect power grids, block communication with planes, cause errors in GPS, and damage satellites. Space weather is also very dangerous for astronauts working outside the International Space Station. I warn them so they can get inside where they'll be safe. So the next time you watch a weather report or check your phone for the forecast, remember, that's me. So look to the sky and wave. I'll be here. Whoa! Things are looking pretty bad down there. But don't worry. I'm going to give weather forecasters a heads up and help you stay safe. I'm a GOZAR series weather satellite, and one of my jobs is to keep an eye on Earth's weather as I orbit above. But I'm 22,000 miles above Earth. How does your local weather forecaster know what I see all the way up here? First, I have to figure out what's going on. I point my special camera at the Earth and take pictures of the clouds I see below. My pictures show where the clouds are, but I also take lots of other notes about the clouds. For example, how high they reach into the atmosphere, how much rain they might cause, and when a severe storm may be forming. But I can't keep all of this information to myself. I have to share it with weather forecasters down on Earth. A big antenna is waiting for my call. Since I'm a satellite, I send my pictures and notes in a computer language of ones and zeros. Luckily, the antenna speaks my language. Computers connected to the antenna organize my notes and combine all of the pictures and cloud information and translate them into weather maps. They send a version of the maps back up to me. I'll hold on to these for later. Another copy of the maps is split into smaller pieces. This helps the maps move faster from one place to another. The map pieces are then sent for processing before being sent back up in the sky to a communication satellite. From there, the maps are picked up by antennas at the National Weather Service forecast offices in each region. There are more than 100 offices. I also take the maps that I received and send them out to companies that specialize in making the maps more colorful and better for viewing on TVs and computers. The colorful maps and the maps from the forecast offices then go to your local weather forecaster. The forecaster combines the information from these maps with lots of other information, like model forecast data and radar data, to make predictions about the upcoming weather in your area. And that's how I help you find out if bad weather is going to ruin your afternoon plans. You're welcome. Soon it will be my time to shine. In outer space. I'm the GOES-R satellite. That stands for Geostationary Operational Environmental Satellite. And the R stands for my order in this series of weather satellites. Like my older siblings before me, I'll do a lot for watching weather, but I'm pretty special because I have a lot of new gadgets. I'm originally from Colorado, but my journey to space has a few stops along the way. I'll be shipped in a very special satellite shipping container to Kennedy Space Center. Moving me around is not easy. I'm over 18 feet wide and weigh 6,000 pounds. And then things get really exciting. I get loaded onto an Atlas V541 launch vehicle. A big rocket! Woo! After Atlas and I blast off together, my compartment separates from the launch vehicle and I continue to climb higher and higher. Then I break away completely and unfurl my solar panel and antenna. After that, I have to use my thrusters to get into just the right position, 22,000 miles above the ground and traveling 1.9 miles per second to keep up with Earth's rotation. And then I can officially start my job along with my fellow GOES sisters, where I take advanced pictures for more accurate weather forecasts, map lightning in real time, and improve the monitoring of the sun's activity. It's going to be so awesome! I can't wait!
And now, marine weather around Alaska.
Today's sea ice analysis, again, not much different from the last several days. Still some heavier concentrations along the eastern Arctic coast there, and then a little bit heavier up to the north. And that expected to kind of shift around in place and slowly decrease in concentrations over the next 5 days. And from there, looking at the marine forecasts for the Panhandle, Wednesday, south winds 25 to 30 knots with seas up to 12 feet and small craft advisories over the inside waters, all southeast winds 25 knots. In the case of Stevens Passage and Lynn Canal, look for gusts to 40 knots. And the north coast, 25 to 30 knots, southerlies, 11-foot seas. And for Thursday, for the north coast, southeast winds 15 to 20 knots, and the central coast, east-southeast 10 to 15 knots, lighter winds in these areas. And the south coast, light east winds at 10 knots, seas subsiding to 5 feet, and northwest breeze for Clarence Strait at 10 knots. Central northern inside channels and waters, southeast winds 15 knots, seas 3 feet. Prince William Sound, southeast winds 25 knots with 6-foot seas, down from the gale force winds you had today. Also down from the gales today, the North Gulf Coast will be looking at small craft advisories. Still a little brisk, 30-knot winds from the south and southeast, seas around 10 feet. Small craft advisories also for the Barren Islands, southeast winds 25 knots. Kamishak Bay, west winds at 20 knots, and 15-knot winds from the east and north for Cook Inlet. And for Thursday, Cook Inlet, east winds 10 to 15 knots, seas 3 feet. Prince William Sound, east winds 15 knots, seas 3 feet. North Gulf Coast, south to southeast winds 15 to 20 knots. And for the Barren Islands, Kamishak Bay, southeast winds at 20 knots with 4 to 6-foot seas. Kodiak Island, small craft advisories Wednesday, south or west to southwest winds 25 to 30 knots. Alaska Peninsula, west-northwest winds at 15 knots, and Bristol Bay, westerlies at 20 knots. For Thursday, southeast winds 20 to 25 knots for the Alaska Peninsula. Bristol Bay, southeast winds 20 knots, and for Kodiak Island, east-southeast winds 15 to 20 knots, seas as high as 8 feet. Eastern Aleutians tomorrow, east and north winds 20 to 25 knots with 4 to 8-foot seas. Central Aleutians, north to northwest winds 20 to 25 knots. And for the western Aleutians, winds from Kiska to Shemya coming up southerly 25 knots during the day with 8-foot seas. And then on Thursday, gale force winds 40 knots out of the west for Shemya to Kiska, southwest 40 knots on Chitka Island, those seas up to 22 feet. Gale warnings for the central Aleutians, southwest 35, and the Fox Islands, small craft advisories, south winds 30 knots, seas as high as 14 feet. Perbolofts tomorrow, north 15, northeast 20 for St. Matthew Island. Yukon Delta Coast, small craft advisories, north 25, north 30 knots for St. Lawrence Island, northwest 20 for the Kuskokwim Delta Coast. And then on Thursday, those winds along the southwest coast swing around to the east and blow at 25 knots. Southeast 30 knot winds for the Pribilof seas 10 feet, east 30 knots for the St. Matthew Island area. And for Norton Sound, St. Lawrence Island, west winds 15 to 20 knots. For the eastern Beaufort Sea coast tomorrow, small craft advisories, east-northeast winds 25 knots and 20 knot northeast winds on the central coast, and then small craft advisories for the western Arctic coast all the way down to Wales for northeast winds 25 to 30 knots. And for Thursday, small craft advisories all along the coast for the east side, north to northeast at 25 knots, central and west side, northeast 30 knots, 6 to 10 foot seas, and then Wales to Cape Lisburn, winds will be northeast at 25 knots with 8 foot seas. And for tonight, rain, moderate to heavy at times, with windiest conditions tonight along the North Gulf Coast, but winds will be on the increase along the coast of the Panhandle, with increasing rain as well. Stays damp over Kodiak Island, but rainfall rates will diminish, and western interior wet, maybe some rain and snow showers depending on your elevation for the Brooks Range and western North Slope. Next warm front spreading rain into the western Aleutians. That system brings some more wind and rain into Adak tomorrow afternoon, extending back to Shemya. Scattered thunderstorms over the central interior, especially the eastern interior north of the Alaska Range. Rain for the mainly northern Panhandle, and stays wet over the south central Alaska and the North Gulf Coast. Drying out in the west, though, North Slope dry in the Arctic coast. And then the next front brings rain into the Alaska Peninsula. Looks cool, damp, and showery across much of mainland Alaska, except for the southern Panhandle.
These forecasts are for planning purposes only. Call 1-800-WX-BRIEF for a formal pre-flight briefing. Always file a flight plan before you go flying. The U.S. Coast Guard Auxiliary urges you to leave a float plan with a friend or the harbor master before you go boating.